President.
The senator from Oregon.
I want to thank the Vice Chair of the Intelligence Committee and pick up on his remarks. And for my colleagues, I believe they've asked that I give my remarks before I offer my unanimous consent request, and that is what I will do. Mr. President, America is 266 days away from the 2020 election. And Majority Leader McConnell has yet to take any concrete steps to protect our foreign elections from hacking or foreign interference. Thanks to this legislative blockade, the United States Senate has been totally derelict in its duty to stop foreign cyber attacks on our elections. And I want to give just one concrete example, having listened to my colleague from Tennessee. Mr. President, there is not one single nationwide election cybersecurity standard on the books. That means there's not even a prohibition on voting machines having an open connection to the internet. Mr. President and colleagues, that is the equivalent of stashing our ballots in the Kremlin. There's no such cybersecurity prohibition. The election security debacle of 2016 was 4 years ago, but still, this body has refused to ask. We know Russian hackers probed all 50 state election systems. They hacked at least one election vendor. Russians penetrated 2 Florida county election systems, according to Florida's governor. That's just what we know about. Despite all the ways foreign hackers have already made it into our election infrastructure, the Congress has refused to arm state and county officials with the knowledge and funding they need to secure their systems. I will tell you what I tell my constituents at town hall meetings at home, and I've got more of them scheduled this weekend. I believe as of today, the 2020 election is going to make 2016 look like small potatoes. The list of threats and vulnerabilities ought to be a wake-up call, a wake-up call, a wake-up call for every member of this Senate. There were the ES&S voting machines that for years came with pre-installed remote access software. There's the fact that Russia hacked an election vendor called VR Systems in the summer of 2016. VR Systems machines in North Carolina malfunctioned on election day that year, and one polling place had to shut down for hours. It took 2.5 years before the Department of Homeland Security even investigated what had happened, and they still have not adequately responded to questions that I and Senator Klobuchar have asked about this. Right now, many election officials across the country are buying election systems that they believe, in good faith, are high-tech, but they're vulnerable to hacking and can be out of the box the moment they come out of the box. They're out of date when they come out of the box. There's a spread of mobile voting apps like Votes that haven't been vetted by top security experts. And there's a reason why so many cybersecurity experts have been sounding the alarm for years, warning that putting computers between a voter and their ballot is a prescription for disaster. What happens when the, quote, glitch changes a candidate's vote total by just 2 or 5% instead of 50%? What happens when a glitch shuts down machines in some precincts and not others, disenfranchising voters and skewing election results? 5 states still exclusively use hackable, paperless voting machines, and 9 other states still use paperless machines in some counties. These are serious problems, Mr. President, but there are some clear solutions. I proposed a bill called the PAVE Act, 3 key priorities that are universally supported by people who are knowledgeable in the election field: paper ballots, routine post-election risk-limiting audits, and federal cybersecurity standards for election systems. Last year, the House passed a major election security bill called the SAFE Act. Senator Klobuchar and I, on behalf of colleagues on this side of the aisle, introduced the Senate version of the SAFE Act. The SAFE Act has all 3 key elements recommended by our nation's top cybersecurity experts: paper ballots, security standards, and post-election audits, as well as the funding necessary to make sure states can live up to the new standards. The SAFE Act, in my view, Mr. President, represents the most comprehensive, common sense defense against foreign election hacking. I strongly urge my colleagues to reconsider their opposition to this vitally important legislation. And now, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent the Rules Committee be discharged from further consideration of S. 2238, the SAFE Act. The Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered read a 3rd time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
The senator from Tennessee.
I object.
Objection is heard.
President,
Senator from Oregon.
to just give a brief response, and I think it's unfortunate that my colleague isn't willing to even engage in this discussion with respect to this, is I just want my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to think about their claims. They are saying, for example, well, they're sympathetic to the idea that there should be more money for elected officials. The recent appropriations funding doesn't even have a requirement that it be spent on election security. States can buy brand new, insecure, paperless voting machines that are pretty much useless when they come out of the box. They can even use the money to buy office chairs or a water cooler for the election office. And again, I come back, and I hope my colleague from Tennessee will reflect on this, because she is somebody who spends a lot of time on technology issues. The idea that this Senate is willing to say, we're not even going to do something. We're not even going to act when you can have voting machines with an open connection to the internet, just like stashing our ballots in the Kremlin. Something really is out of whack, and we ought to be coming together and passing the SAFE Act. We at least ought to be talking about it, and here what we have is a specific, documented case for an important piece of legislation, and the majority just says, that's the way it is. We're happy to say you can have voting machines with an open connection to the internet, and we're not even going to talk about it. Mr. President, I think it's very unfortunate. I yield the floor.